Waste segregation in Quezon City.
Solid waste management or SWM is the discipline of controlling generation, handling, collection, transport, processing and final disposal of wastes resulting from human activity. Its ultimate goal is to reduce the negative impact of waste on health and the environment to promote economic development and superior quality of life. In the Philippines, the Ecological Waste Management Act of 2000, or RA 9003, is the primary legislation that paved the way for the national SWM framework. It mandates local government units to take responsibility for municipal solid waste management in an effort to divert waste away from landfills. One of its key elements is the implementation of solid waste segregation into compostable, recyclable, residual and special categories to facilitate correct waste processing and materials recovery. Despite being enacted for 20 years already, RA 9003 has resulted in a low rate of waste diversion even in Metro Manila, which still continues to send mixed waste into its landfills, reducing their usable lifetime. To understand this phenomenon, this study focused on waste management practices in Quezon City, the largest city in Metro Manila with supposedly a comprehensive SWM plan. According to the RA 9003 compliance report of the Metro Manila Development Authority for 2020, segregation at source is implemented in as high as 84% of the Quezon City barangays. But despite this, it has achieved diverted only 56.10% of its solid waste away from disposal at landfills. In a waste analysis and characterization study conducted by the organization GAIA, it was found that solid waste from the city consisted of 58.86% compostable waste and 16.5% recyclable waste, both of which are considered divertible waste types. This indicates that the solid waste from the city is still mixed when ultimately brought to the landfills, and suggests that its supposedly high rate of waste segregation at source compliance may not paint an accurate picture of the status of its solid waste management operations. To understand the factors of waste segregation in Quezon City, the physical, technological, industrial, psychological, societal and governmental aspects that contribute to its persistence were studied. It involved reviews of various solid waste management reports. An interview with Dr. Marlon Era, behavioral scientist and advocate for SWM. Interviews with SWM stakeholders, namely representatives from the Department of Environment and National Resources, DENR, Metro Manila Development Authority, MMDA, and Barangay. And a survey conducted involving 35 households in Quezon City. The study started in the simplest aspect, which is the physical. Most of the residents do not segregate waste because of lack of space to sort waste and lack of receptacles to store segregated waste. These segregated wastes shall be brought to SWM facilities. However, due to lack of space, SWM facilities such as materials recovery facilities are limited. In the technological aspect, recycling industries do not have equipment which can process all materials. They do not have the capacity to recycle packaging with complex materials such as paper coated with plastic. Furthermore, we are also lack of alternate packaging for single-use plastics and paper, which are both residual wastes, thus, waste generation increases. Another cause of increase of waste generation is the proliferation of sachet marketing strategy of industries. However, manufacturing industry are not compelled to practice extended producer's responsibility. Psychologically, some individuals segregate waste, and some do not because of lack of knowledge on RA 9003 segregation technique. Waste segregation is tedious and there is lack of incentives from barangays. Also, there is no immediate consequence, which gives the idea of nothing will be lost for not complying. The society practices the tingy buying culture because it is the most affordable to buy, especially for the lowest class. The most important aspect is the governmental, political, where laws and policies come in. Issues on enforcement and ineffective monitoring were identified. The city has a lot of deputized enforcers and monitors, but many still violate the law. The enforcement and monitoring within the area of jurisdiction where there are friends, families, relatives and other acquaintances, is ineffective unless there is a strong political will. Furthermore, some law implementers are lack of capacity to manage the increasing number of waste. To be able to move forward and fight this pressing issue, each member of the community should take action and responsibility in order to create an impact and make a change. The force field analysis includes the following driving factors. 1. The implementation of no segregation, no collection policy. 2. Fear of exclusion from garbage collection. 3. It is a source of income by selling recyclables in junk shops. 4. Segregation can be a big help to the government in addressing solid waste management issues. 5. Segregation can save government expenses for manpower allocation and disposal fees. And the following hindering factors. 1. Residents have a lack of knowledge regarding RA 9003 and the city ordinances. 2. Lack of strict implementation of the RA 9003 in a LGU level, governance issue. 3. Proper segregation is a tedious process with little incentive for doing so, psychological, operant conditioning. 4. Not enough receptacles and space at home to store segregated waste. 5. Too much waste generated tend to be unmanageable, exceed the barangay's capacity to manage, not enough space to establish an MRF with the necessary capacity. The Environment Code of Quezon City mandates the collection of domestic biodegradable and residual waste by contracted dump trucks. Recyclable wastes brought to barangay materials recovery facilities are sold to junk shops. And special bulky and hazardous wastes coordinated for special collection through the barangay. It implements a waste collection scheme where trucks perform door-to-door collection of biodegradable or residual waste on specific days to the week, employing a no segregation, no collection policy, and recyclables must be brought to MRFs or junk shops. When communicating segregation policies and guidelines to residents, however, the city uses only the generic terms, biodegradable, or nabubalak, and non-biodegradable, or hindi nabubalak, to describe waste categories. This appears to the Environment Code of Quezon City mandates the collection of domestic biodegradable and residual waste by contracted dump trucks. Recyclable wastes brought to barangay materials recovery facilities are sold to junk shops. And special bulky and hazardous wastes coordinated for special collection through the barangay. It implements a waste collection scheme where
Let us first define what operant conditioning is. Operant conditioning, also known as instrumental condition, is a method of learning wherein the consequence of an action being done by the actor is related to the probability that it will be repeated. It is a conditioning wherein actions that were rewarded were more likely to occur again while actions that were punished will be less frequently done. There are incentive programs and initiatives from the government and private organizations which aim to encourage the communities to do proper solid waste management. In the implementing rules and regulations, the RA 9003 and the city's ordinance number SP 2350, S2014, it is stated that the incentives program, in order to encourage the participation of the concerned sectors, shall be included in the solid waste management plans. Segregation at source is commonly implemented in households, but the benefit becomes nullified upon collection since there are occasions wherein only one collection truck is available to haul the different types of waste segregated. It is also considered that segregation is a tedious and time-consuming activity since there are certain materials or wastes which are difficult to classify. In an interview with Dr. Segregation at source is commonly implemented in households, but the benefit becomes nullified upon collection since there are occasions wherein only one collection truck is available to haul the different types of waste segregated. It is also considered that segregation is a tedious and time-consuming activity since there are certain materials or wastes which are difficult to classify. In an interview with Dr. Unavailability of physical resources such as area and bins can be a hindrance in segregation. In the survey conducted, respondents were asked if they segregate at home, and those who answered, no, said that it is due to the unavailability of space and trash bins at home. In the 2020 RA 9003 LGU compliance report, only 64 out of 142 or 45% of the barangays have their own MRFs. This issue can also be supported by an interview conducted wherein the barangay official explained that a temporary MRF is only available due to unavailability of space, and sometimes junk shops directly obtain the recyclables. Another factor that can be considered is the low number of collection vehicles for the wastes. Despite the segregation at source, the wastes are still being mixed together upon collection since only one truck is used. RA 9003 is an act providing for an ecological solid waste management program, creating the necessary institutional mechanisms and incentives, declaring certain acts prohibited and providing penalties and appropriating funds therefor, and for other purposes. Lack of strict implementation of the act may result to different solid waste management issues. Pursuant to Section 10 of RA 9003, the municipality or city is responsible for the collection of non-recyclable and special waste. However, Quezon City collection trucks collects biodegradable and non-biodegradable waste in a separate collection schedule. The law states what kinds of waste cities should collect, but Quezon City do not strictly implement what is prescribed by law. Furthermore, the current collection tends to mix non-recyclable or residual waste, recyclable and special wastes, which are all considered non-biodegradable wastes. The Philippines is the fourth largest generator of solid waste among the Southeast Asian countries. According to a United Nations Environment Report, the Philippines produces around 14.66 tons of trash a year. This can be expected to increase since the COVID-19 pandemic has generated special wastes in the form of face masks and other personal protective equipment. With the causal factors that have been identified that led to this phenomenon we are experiencing, here are the team's proposed interventions.
To address misclassification of wastes brought about by ambiguous guidelines and confusion of residents, we propose the following. The city conduct a revised information campaign that employs the principles of clarity and consistency for effective communication of its waste segregation and collection policies. This involves correcting the terminologies used to designate waste categories to avoid ambiguity, and by coordinating these across all agencies of the city so that a coherent message is conveyed to residents. The campaign should focus on teaching residents the mechanics of solid waste segregation according to RA 9003, as well as provide examples of common household wastes and their correct classification. The LGU can consider mandating schools in the city to include waste segregation in their curriculum so that students can disseminate their knowledge to their families as well. Lack of strict implementation was identified as one of the contributing factors to the waste segregation issue. RA 9003 compliance reports were found to inaccurately represent the actual state of the city's waste management programs. For this, we propose the following. Regular rigorous SWM performance audits of the city and its barangays be conducted by a third-party non-government agency well known to the public for their expertise in environment and comprehensive assessment methodologies. The audits should focus on the quality of the LGU's implementation process, performance of its waste management system, and the monitoring practices it employs to ensure compliance in order to provide a more reliable assessment of the city's compliance to RA 9003. Audit scores can be publicized and regular follow-ups on audits recommendations can be conducted to promote transparency and accountability. In order to address the concerns in operant conditioning and limited resources, two proposed interventions are presented. First is the junk shops on wheels. To avoid incurring additional costs in addressing this phenomenon, we will be utilizing the resources available to us. The barangays would collaborate with the junk shops in their jurisdiction and direct them to collect the recyclable materials being segregated by the households. The junk shops shall be allowed to collect the recyclables in a door-to-door collection manner but applying the same selling rates in the shops. A logbook shall be required in order to account the amount of recyclables collected and the payment made per transaction. To monitor the intervention proposed, junk shops shall provide a monthly report consisting of the type of recyclables collected, weight, and total payment made, which will be submitted to the barangay officials as an attachment to the compliance report. The report shall be made available in the barangay or LGU's official website. Next is the food stub program. The recyclables brought to the MRFs of the barangay will be exchanged with food stubs or coupons which can be used to buy meals or grocery supplies for the household. Local markets and food establishments can partner with Quezon City local government unit to encourage the people to boost the economy. To monitor the program, a report shall be submitted and attached to the LGU's RA 9003 compliance report. It shall contain the type and amount of recyclables exchanged. The extended producer responsibility is defined by Britannica.com as a practice and a policy approach in which producers take responsibility for management of the disposal of products they produce once those are designated as no longer useful by consumers. More and more countries around the world are adopting various forms of EPR since they have started to realize the harsh effects of unsegregated wastes. In the Philippines alone, a similar program was introduced, through House Bill 6249, to address plastic wastes in the country. Since plastics are not the only wastes, although still considered as a serious problem, there are other various types of wastes that still end up in landfills. A wider scope of the EPR can be implemented in the National Capital Region that includes other types of wastes. In conclusion, this proposal aimed to address the pressing issues related to solid waste management. Causal factors have been presented which includes the following. 1. Incorrect waste segregation by city residents. 2. Operant conditioning, psychological, towards solid waste management. 3. Physical issues, limited resources. 4. Unmanageable waste production. And 5. Lack of strict implementation of RA 9003. The proposed interventions covered the citizens, government officials, and producers. These are 1. RA 9003-based Waste Segregation Information Program for citizens. 2. Junk shops on wheels. 3. Food stub program for compliance at household level. 4. Third-party SWM performance audit of LGU, and 5. Implementation of Extended Producer Responsibility, EPR. To be able to move forward and fight this pressing issue, each member of the community should take action and responsibility in order to create an impact and make a change.